At the edge of Europe, a small island once dreamed beyond its shores. From mist-covered docks, wooden ships pushed into unknown seas. And Britain's greatest journey began. It started with trade and curiosity. But it became a mission of power, profit, and destiny. The British Empire rose from merchants' decks to the thrones of kings, stretching across half the planet, and shaping the modern world. Yet every triumph carried its shadow. For every crown of glory, a story of guilt followed close behind. Was this empire a symbol of progress or conquest? A legacy of civilization or control? Welcome to Echoes of Empire, where we bring the forgotten stories of Britain's past back to life. The 15th century, England was no empire. It was a nation scarred by war and hunger. Spain, Portugal, and the Ottomans ruled the seas. But in Bristol and Plymouth, new dreamers stared toward the western horizon. To them, the ocean was not a wall, it was a road. In 1497, John Cabot's small ship, the Matthew, sailed into the unknown. His maps were crude, his supplies few. But his voyage proved one truth: the world was far larger than England had ever imagined. Merchants followed, bringing tales of gold, spices, and untapped lands. The hunger to rule the seas began to burn. By Elizabeth I's reign, ambition had hardened into purpose. Privateers like Francis Drake plundered Spanish treasure fleets. The Queen herself invested in their ventures, turning piracy into policy. Each captured ship was more than wealth, it was confidence. England began to believe it was destined not just to trade, but to command. The age of empire had begun. The 16th century seas were battlefields of ambition. Spain claimed the New World, Portugal ruled the spice routes. England entered late, but hungry, its navy grew sleek and ruthless. Sailors learned to fight storms as fiercely as enemies. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed to crush England. But the weather, the tides, and English gunfire shattered it. The victory changed everything. England, once a target, had become a power. From that moment, the nation believed the sea was its destiny. The world's oceans turned into English highways. Ships carried wool and weapons out. Tea, tobacco, and sugar back. Profit flowed through London's veins. And with profit came purpose. To claim, to colonize, to control. Rule Britannia, and Britannia was ready to rule. In 1600, Queen Elizabeth granted a royal charter to a group of merchants. The East India Company. What began as commerce soon became conquest. Company ships carried more cannon than cargo. Warehouses turned into forts. Clerks into commanders. By the mid-1700s, the company controlled vast regions of India. It minted coins, commanded armies, negotiated with kings. It was an empire in all but name. Cotton, silk, indigo, and spices poured into Britain. In return came soldiers, taxes, and control. The jewel of India glittered brightly. But it was built on hunger, debt, and divide and rule. From Calcutta's docks to Bengal's rice fields, British presence grew heavier each year. The line between trade and tyranny vanished. As India fell under British command, the empire's eyes turned west and south. The Caribbean islands became plantations of profit. Sugar, rum, and slaves formed the cruel triangle that fed Britain's wealth. Millions of Africans were torn from their homes, shipped in chains across oceans, their labor turning British ports into palaces. Liverpool and Bristol grew rich on misery. In London, few questioned it. They called it enterprise. They called it progress. In Africa, forts like Cape Coast and Elmina became gateways of grief. In the Americas, red-coated soldiers defended plantations with the same pride as they defended the crown. By the 18th century, Britain had become the world's workshop of trade and war. Its navy patrolled every major sea. Its merchants dictated prices from Jamaica to Japan, but power breeds resistance. The 19th century dawned in smoke and steel. The Industrial Revolution transformed Britain from a nation of farmers into a furnace of invention. Steam engines roared, factories rose, and the empire's heart pulsed with iron and coal. Railways stretched across continents. Telegraph lines carried Britain's voice from London to Delhi. Britain called itself the workshop of the world, and its colonies, the supply lines of empire. In London, the Great Exhibition of 1851 displayed the empire's wealth under a glass palace. Gold from Africa, jewels from India, tea from Ceylon. All trophies of progress. But the glory had a darker reflection. Children toiled 12 hours a day in factories. In colonies, famine followed forced trade. The empire boasted of enlightenment. But beneath its crown, shadows deepened. Where there is rule, there is resistance. In 1857, India erupted in revolt. Soldiers who once fought for the company turned their guns against it. Cities burned. Empires trembled. The British crushed the rebellion. But the company's rule was finished. The crown took direct control. The British Raj was born. Elsewhere, the pattern repeated. In Africa, tribal leaders resisted settlers. In Ireland, revolution simmered. In the Caribbean, freedom was demanded. Each uprising was met with force. And each defeat sowed seeds of independence. The empire stood tall. But cracks had begun to show. The 20th century brought storms no empire could weather. 2 world wars drained Britain's wealth and will. Colonies fought beside their rulers. Then asked why they were still ruled. India won independence in 1947. And the unraveling began. Africa followed, one flag at a time. By the 1960s, the sun was setting on the empire that once claimed it would never set. Yet Britain's legacy endured. In laws, languages, railways, and resentments. Its empire had built the modern world. And broken it, too. Was it glory, or guilt? Empires rise on ambition and fall on memory. The British Empire was both a marvel and a warning. A story of courage and cruelty. Of progress paid for in pain. Its influence still echoes through the nations it touched. And through the conscience of Britain itself. Every empire believes it rules for good. Until history whispers otherwise. This was Echoes of Empire. Subscribe for more untold stories. From the heart of Britain's history.